Hello everybody, this is Kiana Mayfield from LibraLunaCenter.com and welcome to your weekly forecast for the week of July 3rd through the 9th of 2017. And this week we are having a full moon in Capricorn, which is one of the biggest full moons of the entire year of 2017. But this won't happen until the weekend. So before that happens, July 3rd, we start off the week with the moon in Scorpio, and this moon in Scorpio will be forming will be activating a Grand Water Trine Kite in the sky between all of the planets in Cancer at the moment, as well as Chiron and Neptune in Pisces. And so at the apex of this kite will be Pluto, and Mars will be opposing it at the focal point. And as this happens, Venus will be at the very last stage, the very last degree, the anaretic degree of Taurus. And so, where we've been the past couple weeks, we are healing, purging, releasing, focusing, and coming back to ourselves, coming back to our centers, right? But with the moon in Scorpio at the beginning of this week, this is about the focusing of our emotional pondering. This is about committing to our passion, because I feel that on some level, as we are traveling through the Cancer season at this point, our soul is trying to speak to us by going back, by returning to our past, by returning to our history, through the form of memory, right? And so with the moon in Scorpio preparing for the conjunction to its ruling planet Pluto, right? Before we get to that point, we're remembering what brings us passion in our life, right? What ultimately makes us feel good. There is this almost undeniable passion forming in the universe right now. It's underhanded, it's beneath the surface, but it is felt, right? Because of this Grand Water Trine Kite in the sky. And it is speaking towards what makes us feel good, right? What ultimately brings us a sense of value and purpose in our life. What not only feels good, but tastes good, right? With Venus in the last degree of Taurus, this is the final questioning of what we desire, who we desire. And from there, it is the emotional readiness to face our desires, right? Because ultimately, with all of these oppositions to Pluto we've been dealing with for the past week now, right? And even before then, as there was all of this energy building up in Cancer at the start of the summer solstice, right? We've retreated, we've withdrawn, we've returned to our shell, right? And in that shell, we find our dreams, we find our passion, and we find what we want, what we desire. And in opposition to Pluto, it's almost as if what we desire is the scariest thing to us, right? It is what is most uncomfortable. It is what is most beneath the surface, right? But Venus in Taurus is the recognition that what feels good to you ultimately is what is good for you, is what is meant for you, right? And when you have the courage to be led by your intuition into this almost, I'm seeing a void, right? This void that you have not discovered yet because you have not confronted it, right? You have not confronted what lies beneath the surface. And the confrontation will happen this weekend, right? But the moon in Scorpio at the beginning of this week is giving us not only the courage, but the passion and the determination and the commitment to see what we truly desire and to make the decision to confront it by this week's end, right? And so the energy will shift dramatically from where we've been for the past couple weeks, because we will have, by July 4th through the 5th, we will have Venus moving into Gemini and Mercury entering Leo, which is in its fall position, but I feel like this is something we need, right? Because we've been so caught up in what other people think about what we're doing and what we're passionate about and what we ultimately desire to create in our life, that Mercury and Leo speaking to your heart, right? It is speaking to the need to focus only on yourself and what you desire to create as an individual. And during the same time, we have the Sun in Cancer trining over to Neptune retrograde as it is simultaneously squaring Jupiter, which is activating this final quincunx that Jupiter and Neptune will be making towards each other in the sky for the third and final time. And on the 5th, the moon will move into Sagittarius, which is the ruler of both Jupiter and Neptune. It will be opposing Venus and trining over to Mercury. So where we have opened up the door to our subconscious, right? While Chiron has just stationed retrograde, where we've opened up that door, the portal to our subconscious, where we have opened up the band-aid and allowed the wound to be exposed for what it was, right? The energy shifts, it gets lighter now, because now this is the opening, the breath of fresh air, the opening of the doors to multiple different paths you can take in your life, right? This is looking at, with the Sun especially squaring over to Jupiter, this is looking at every single door that's available to you. And the recognition with Venus in Gemini and its ruling planet Mercury in Leo, ultimately we recognize that every story, every path leads to a certain result, right? It is its own hallway. Every story is its own hallway. And we're looking at, I feel, multiple different directions, but in a sense that it is interdimensional, right? If you take this path, it will lead you here, right? If you take this path, you know it will lead you over there. And ultimately, in the recognition of the options, the opportunities, you're witnessing life open up to you, but it is in finding what speaks to your heart that sets you free, right? And the majority of July is about finding what speaks to our heart by researching, by looking at our heart, right? By looking at what triggers us emotionally, looking at what pulls us, what pulls our attention, what pulls our drive, what pulls our love even. What do we love? What do we want? And it's in playing with everything that's in front of you that you find the answer you're seeking, right? And the ultimate path you will take is a staircase, because it will lead you. It will lead you up, right? It isn't just a hallway that you travel down towards to reach the door to the other side, right? To get to the next room, to get to the next chapter. Your ultimate path is a staircase, and it leads you to the highest, I would say, version of yourself. And the highest version of yourself is you living in your heart, heart-centered, living from your passion to what speaks to who you are as an individual soul. And it's finding the courage again to love yourself, right? Because that's not an easy thing to do. And with the North Node in Leo at this time, this is our greatest challenge, right? Because, yes, on the other side of the self-love is everything we desire. But we have to believe in our own self enough, to believe in our own instincts, to believe that we can make it happen. And that requires a level of trust in yourself that many of us do not possess, have not been taught to possess, because we've been taught to believe that we must rely on other people to give us the answer, right? With the South Node in Aquarius especially, this is the whole notion of doing what's best for everybody, right? For the collective, doing what's for the good of all, right? Or so we believe. But ultimately, what is for the good of all is you living at your heart, right? Trusting in your heart and creating from that space anything that you desire. And so, it's very light energy compared to where we've been the past couple weeks. But we're still in Cancer season, so it's a very emotional ride, continuing on. But by the weekend, by July 8th, and for some people in most regions of the world, it will be July 9th when the full moon occurs. But on the West Coast where I live, it is July 8th. There will be a full moon, 17 degrees Capricorn, in almost exact conjunction to Pluto retrograde. And it will be squaring over to Jupiter, sextiling Neptune, and opposing the Sun and Mars in Cancer. And as this occurs, Mars will also be in quincunx over to Saturn retrograde. So the full moon is highlighting the liftoff into the eclipse season that we're preparing for, right? July is the preparation for the eclipse season. And the full moon starts it off, right? It lights the match. And with this full moon, there is the ending of a chapter right? The ending of a chapter that has been ruled, dominated by beliefs that are not your own, right? Beliefs that have encased you in fear, right? A chapter that has been dominated by fear and restriction of path, restriction of self, restriction of belief, restriction of what is possible, right? And we're ending this chapter once and for all because we recognize that this restriction, this fear that we have been facing for so very long of our lives, right, is controlled by ourselves, by our own unconscious, right, by our own projection of our shadow, right? And it's in facing our shadow, in facing the deepest layer of ourselves, in coming to terms with what we desire at the core base level of our being, right? That we enter a new chapter, ruled by sovereignty, sovereignty over our own Saturn, because the moon in conjunction to Pluto, it's intense, right? It is extremely intense. It is almost an exact conjunction to Pluto. And this is everything you desire. And everything you've repressed as well, coming to the surface, boiling to the surface. And in this boiling to the surface, as the steam rises and you are caught in this cauldron of energy, right? The question for all of us is, will you let your fear rule you, or will you rule your fear? And with Chiron in station in retrograde, right? As it has just gone retrograde before this full moon, we have come to terms with our own pain. We are coming to terms with our own pain. And since Chiron is in square to Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, this entire year, right? We work through our issues by ruling our own fear, by coming to terms with what we control and what we do not control, right? And this new chapter that we're entering into, right, that holds everything you desire and ultimately want to create, that speaks to the child within you, right? It requires a degree of daring to face what is most uncomfortable within you, right? And what's most uncomfortable is whatever you've suppressed, whatever you have hidden away in fear that it is unacceptable, right? Your desires. And in these desires coming to the surface, in these deep emotions coming to the surface, you recognize your part to play in all of this is to live into it, right? Taking the step to live into it. And the step is daunting, right? The step is leaping off the cliff into the unknown, into the wild, basically, into the void, into where you've never been before, because it is in facing everything that has been in the dark, right? And with Mars in Cancer in quincunx over to Saturn retrograde, we may not feel ready entirely to embark upon this new chapter, to embark upon this new path. We know the direction we're going ultimately, because it is undeniable, because it speaks to your deepest core passions and everything that makes you who you are, right? It is not something you can hide, right? In one way or another, this weekend, everything is laid out on the table, right? And suddenly, where we have been on the fence, the fence is disappearing, right? And it is in choosing what speaks to your heart that you land on the right side. But it is not as though you have to go a million miles an hour. You know, Mars is still in Cancer, so this full moon is about the recognition of the volcano that lives within all of us, right? And this volcano is the buildup of passion that we have kept in dark for so long, and this passion needs to be explored, needs to erupt, right, in your life. And the lava that will travel from the climaxing of this volcano, right, will seep into every area of your life. But lava moves slow, right? And it is it is realizing that things are not as bad as you think they are, right? And in that acknowledgement, you recognize that you can travel this path, this new journey, this new chapter at your own pace. You can set the pace. And the pace is determined by your emotions and your feelings and what feels comfortable to you. Ultimately, you're going to have to go down the path where you're least comfortable, right? But how you go down that uncomfortable path, you can choose to be comfortable, right? You can choose what makes you comfortable, the tools, the resources, and the pace at which you're comfortable going down this uncomfortable path, right? So it's a kind of an oxymoron, but that's what oppositions do. And what is uncomfortable is the fact that undeniably, in some form or fashion, this is all of us needing to stand on our own podium and speak our truth, right? Speak what is true to us, what lies underneath the surface that we have repressed. And in speaking our truth, we reclaim our power, we reclaim our Saturn, we reclaim our side of the story. Because we're no longer denying how we feel. And even though we are at this point in the story, ultimately, where we're at a crossroads, right? We're at a crossroads, and we recognize we can go down multiple different paths, right? All of the doors opened in June, right? We had so many opportunities. We experienced new angles, new sides of life that opened us up, in a sense, to different angles of the story, right? To different angles of the overall picture. And even though we have all of these choices, right? The choice, only one choice is really yours. And the choice that is yours is the one that speaks to your heart, is the one that is led by your heart, is the one that arouses the passion, the fire, the flame within you, but as well as the love at the center of your being. And with the full moon in direct confrontation of the unknown. You step into your future, right? And this is preparing for I would say, the blast off of the new chapter to come with the new moon in Leo, which will occur July 23rd. And it will be in conjunction to Mars, which I will be here to discuss. But we're coming to the end. We're coming to the end of suppression. We're coming to the end of our prison sentence, even. And what's on the other side of these walls we've built? Is unknown, but is known. You know, is known by way of your intuition, by way of your heart, by way of the senses that are not physical. And it is something we've known for a very long time. It is something we've felt for a very long time. What is our personal truth, right? And now the full moon is highlighting the need to confront it viscerally, because it can no longer be contained. We have run the course of our prison sentence, and we are no longer staying in our cell. We cannot and we will not, right? Ultimately. So I hope you all have a wonderful full moon and week up ahead, and to prepare for the last quarter square of the moon in Aries, which will be in conjunction to Uranus, as it is in square to the Sun and Mars in Cancer, which will be like a breakout period. This is while we are coming to the end of the prison sentence, this will be actually us being released from jail, right? So looking forward to that next week, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. I'll see you all next time.